It'll be the best meeting I've had all day.
Yeah, I wish I could say that.
My background. Oh, it's clear down at the bottom, maybe? No.
So
Oh, are we already recording?
we are already recording. You're on, Emmy.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. All right. I am here today to welcome you to the Laugh Lab Storymasters November. Oh, no, we're not in November. October 10th meeting. And as a Toastmaster club, we of course have a mission that we live by, and we provide a positive and supportive learning experience in which our members are empowered to develop communication and leadership skills, resulting in greater self-confidence and personal growth. But here at Laugh Lab Storymasters, our further mission is to help people develop their storytelling skills and helping them to add humor to their speeches. And in today's meeting, we're also going to be looking at how to add tension to our stories. So with that, I will introduce our Toastmaster of the day. Moi. And welcome, Lee. Lee was just stepped in the door, so welcome, Lee. All right. So today's meeting is going to be a tremendous lot of fun, I think, because we're going to learn about how to add tension and suspense to our stories. And since this is the month of Halloween, we all love to tell scary stories on Halloween. So it seemed very appropriate to us that we should talk about adding tension. And today, who is going to be timing for us today? Mary, Kyle, Mary. Kyle is timing for us today. All right. Now, I am going to go ahead and introduce our main speaker of the day. So the way this will work today is we will have a presenter, and she will talk about adding tension. And then we're going to move on to having a couple of speakers that give scary speeches. They're going to give us some scary stories. And then after that, we will do our evaluations. And then we're going to have table topics where you get to tell about things in your life that have scared you to pieces. Okay, so getting started. We'll start with our presenter, Mary Morrison. Our good friend Mary Morrison is well known for her skills in getting lost, cooking, and organizing. I'm not sure if she means getting lost in cooking or getting lost in organizing, or if she's good at those other two things. But telling scary stories is new to her. What better way to learn than to help others understand the skills of scary stories? Join me in welcoming Mary, ghosts, monsters, and things that go bump in the night.
Thank you, Madam Toastmasters. I'm guessing that as many people as are gathered here tonight are the number of things that we are afraid of. That if I asked you what was scary to you, which I will in a minute, that you'll write a unique answer, and everyone here would have a different answer. But they all have something in common. Universally, we tend to be scared of falling and Oh, there's one other one I've just completely forgotten. I think it's forgetting things. Forgetting what we are supposed to be doing, forgetting where we're going to be, who we are. The fear itself is the same. And fear, nothing wrong with being afraid. It's what keeps us from taking risks at times in our lives. Risks that we, as I age, I'm more afraid of falling. And especially afraid of falling if I'm by myself. Because what if I can't get up and I don't have the kind of help I might need? If I'm walking or driving on a very narrow road, I tend to hug the cliffside. I don't think teenagers have that same fear. They tend to take a little extra risks, and maybe I did too when I was their age. I don't know. I've watched my granddaughters. They seem very reasonable at the type of risk that they're willing to take. They know their limits. They love scary stories. Why do they love scary stories so much? Well, according to Elizabeth Ellis in her book, Prepare to Scare, one of the reasons we like scary stories is because we are working on our courage muscle. Courage is a muscle. And when we expose ourselves to scary stories, to scary events, and we use that courage muscle, we strengthen it. We strengthen it to do other things that we really want to do. Yesterday, I went snorkeling. For some of you, that might not be scary. I do not swim. I do not like to go over my head in water. And God knows I don't want to put my face underwater and not be able to breathe. I snorkeled yesterday. I used that muscle, that courage muscle. I used it for a full 60 minutes before I had used it up and reached my limit, and spent the rest of the lesson on the board that had taken me out in the water. But I'm really proud of myself. Tonight I'm going to share some things that you may or may not have put together about what's scary. But I'd love to hear from you. What do you think makes scary? So what do you think makes for a good scary story? If you put it in the chat, or you know what, there's not very many of us, is it? So maybe we could just share out loud.
The unknown.
So,
The unknown.
the unknown. Fear of the unknown.
Unexpected.
Moody setting.
A moody setting.
Good moody setting.
A good moody setting. Lee, I heard you.
Black cats.
Black cats scare you. So legitimately, or they're a good mood setter for a scary story. Yes, they portend something, don't they? Yeah. How about you, Phil? Do you have anything that
I was thinking unexpected things, like going around a corner and seeing an elephant in your face, or expecting sunshine and getting a thunderstorm.
Yes, the unexpected.
How about impending death?
Oh, death. Yes. Actually, when I said I forgot what the second one was, actually, fear of death and fear of falling are two universal fears.
Well, I put taxes early. I think it's the same thing.
Taxes.
That is death.
Fear of not having enough money for taxes could be, right? So one of the things that I picked up in doing some of my research is that there are some universal elements that if you're going to write or tell a scary story, it's helpful to be clear about the type of scare that you want. For example, I'll give you a few examples. A ghost story. Why are ghost stories so scary? Universally, ghost stories give us, it's something about our past. It's something that haunts us about our past, or something that's unresolved about our past. So you introduce ghosts if what you want to do is talk about some past aspect of a life that is coming in to haunt. So that is the metaphor of the ghost. We want to put something to rest, and a ghost will help you do that. Monster stories, however, are the opposite. They are a fear of the future, of the unknown. Something very dangerous is out there and we don't know what it is because it's so uncertain and nameless and faceless even. We think about how do I know what's going to happen next? Think about all of the movies that came out in the 50s that were about scaring us about the atomic bomb, the giant ants, the fly, the Godzilla. All of those were the monsters that we were trying to face kind of collectively as a society, really, that helped us kind of put that muscle to work. What would we do? Oh, good, someone, a crazy scientist may come in and save us. But typically it was the sheriff of a small town that figured it out with his gal pal. Right? What about witches and spells, voodoo people, enchantments? Well, those are really a metaphor for the loss of power, an addiction over us, an enchantment. We're under the spell of something. So if you want to talk about fighting against the addiction in your life or the powerlessness that you have in life, that you would introduce that concept of a witch. We talk about some of those good witch stories that we might have heard. The Wizard of Oz. I haven't thought through clearly what Wizard of Oz had to do, what Dorothy was fighting with, or what Frank L. Baum was fighting with when he introduced the witch. But often witches, if you think about the witch stories and when they were very popular, and when they had the most power, was they were almost always females who had lost who might still have a lot of influence in society, but had lost their usefulness to some extent to be people who were having children. So they weren't growing, they weren't future brides for men, and they weren't children bearing age. So we wanted to minimize the power that they had in our lives. Vampires, they suck something out of us. We are powerless against them. They suck life itself. They suck joy. It's a very specific kind of monster or ghost. They suck our lives, our very energy. And we have our urban legends. Who hasn't heard the one about the couple dating who went up to Lover's Lane and listening to the radio heard there was a one-eyed monster on the loose and he was going to kill you and he had a hook for an arm, and they heard something knocking at the door and on that car, and it so frightened them that they tore away. And as they did, when they got home, they realized a hook was hanging on the driver's door. They had come that close. Well, imagine how satisfying it would be for parents to tell that tale to their teenagers in order to get them to avoid, right? That's what they would get to do. So there's lots of urban legends that somehow grow up. For me, it was the cars that would flash the light if you were driving, if you were a woman. You got into a car at night and you would, as you drove away, someone following you, and they kept flashing their lights. And they kept flashing their lights. And when you finally pulled over somewhere and they got out of their car, someone got out of the back seat of your car. They had been flashing their lights because they saw the person coming up to grab you, and they were flashing their lights at you to get you to warn the other person that they saw them. That was actually terrifying to me as a teenage girl. That happened to me too often. Not somebody actually was in my car, but that I was by myself in the dark at night, right? So, there's one monster that I didn't talk about, but it's zombies. So again, I want to make this a little interactive. What do you think zombies are a metaphor for? think about what they do first.
I think that, well, mindless destruction, for one thing.
Mindless destruction,
Mindless, relentless destruction.
relentless, mindless
Yeah. Of course, also hunger.
hunger. They don't speak. They're human, or they were human, so they are us. People we know without their soul, without their humanity. We kind of do fear that. There are times we may have all turned into some kind of beast or monster where, like, I worried, like, why did I have that kind of a reaction? Yeah, so they're similar to vampires, but uh, zombies are very popular now, and I think that says something about our society. Oh, someone, so sorry. Someone's at the door of this condo. I have to just answer it. Hang on a second.
I'm going to pause.
Okay.
Was
Got
there
it.
a hook on the doorknob?
I know there is a hook on the doorknob.
She's licking.
Sorry. My travel companion answered it. So when you are thinking about kind of a scary story that you want to craft, think about the kind of protagonist that you want to create. Is it a monster? Is it a ghost? Is it a vampire? And then you know how to actually craft the scary story. It's going to be really similar to how we craft a story now, right? You're going to have a good opening, a good point you're trying to make, a scary conclusion. The thing that's really different about a scary story with a conclusion is you don't necessarily want to have a happy ending. You may want to have an ending where people walk out. They're afraid to leave because you've done a good job scaring them. And as long as they know that they were there that night to get a scary story, you know, that's you've met the contract with them. So other things you do want to do when crafting a scary story, you want to have believable characters. You yourself have to be somewhat believable. And even if you're creating a story up about a monster, oftentimes if you bring out the humanity of the monster, think King Kong. You know, didn't we all just a little bit want King Kong to be to be happy? It was clear King Kong was unhappy with that girl, but he was also very gentle with her. So you think about some degree of vulnerability in that monster because it makes them more real. And the thing that might be different from a scary story than anything else is you really have to tap into the emotional state of your listener because you're there to scare them. And they know that you're going to scare them. What you're trying to do in a scary story is kind of think about 4 different elements. This is called the aha, aha, ah, ha ha, funny, and amen. So start with ha ha first. You know, you want some element where you're combining with the audience, you're narrating a story that you're together with them, and the surprise at the end is, oh, it was just a mistake. Oh, all that time we thought we needed to be scared about something and it was really just a cat playing on the piano, right? Walking on the keyboard kind of moment. Ha ha. Aha, the jump story. These are really common, right? The jump, the moment where you say something that's so surprising, boom. Whew, that scared me. The story. Oh, Ghost was a movie years ago and was so heartwarming and romantic in one sense. I mean, it could be kind of scary, but we all we liked that monster or that protagonist. And then amen. We vanquished the fear somehow. We've come to a satisfying conclusion. So, ha ha, aha, ah, and amen. I have a lot more I could really say, but I need to close this coffin now. You have done a good job in a scary story. If you have helped, you've brought your audience along with you through the fear, whether you're narrating it or you're building characters. You've tapped into their fears. And in the end, you let them have a satisfying ending, but not necessarily a happy ending. A scary ending can work too. Think of how some of the greatest children's tales ended, satisfying, maybe vanquishing, but at least escaping the bad environment that they got themselves into. Madam Toastmaster.
Thank you, Mary. That was really interesting. I really liked the working on the courage muscle. Okay. We're
Give
going
me
to
a
let
second to reset.
Okay. Kyle's got your picture.
There's the thing. I keep reading this. I'm like, I didn't say that. Oh, Kyle has signed in as though he's me.
Yes.
So that's why I will try to say that if it's really me, it's me talking. I'll try to say that if it's me in the chat. Otherwise, it's Kyle.
Ready when you are. Thank you for your patience.
There we are. All right. So we have a couple of people doing practice speeches for us so that we can learn to be scarier by listening to someone do it really well. And I have heard this one that Kyle's going to do, so it is scary. So our practice speaker, our first one tonight, is Kyle Hall, who loves spooky campfire stories. He has a collection of books with these type of stories. But tonight, he offers us a fun little ditty of greed, obsession, and unintended consequences, providing us an adaptation of Henry Kuttner's story, The Graveyard Rats. Please help me welcome Kyle Hall.
Matthias was a greedy, grasping, obsessive man, a miser. He was angry all the time. He hated just about everybody because everybody had something he didn't. That man had a beautiful wife. That man had a wife who could cook. That man had kids who behaved. Matthias was alone. And he lived in a ramshackled shack next to the graveyard, which was slightly convenient because he was a gravedigger. This was a small New England town, and just about the lowest job you could have here, besides maybe a leather tanner, was being the gravedigger. And when one of the poor people died, or one of the moderately poor people died, their body would be brought down, and the coffin maker would bring a coffin, and they'd put it outside Matthias's shack so that he could go and dig the grave and get the body ready for the funeral. And he liked the fact that they put the body outside his shack, because when everyone left, he would pry open the coffins and steal rings or necklaces, or even pry out a tooth with a little gold in it. And if you were to go into Matthias's shack and pull up the right floorboard, you would have found small jars filled with rings and necklaces, and 2 jars filled with teeth that still had the gold in them. Matthias was saving up his little hoard so that someday he could move someplace nicer, warmer, and he could have the things that everybody else had. But there was one thing Matthias wanted more than anything else, and that was the diamond stick pin worn by the wealthiest man in town. Now, the wealthy man, he lived up on that hill, way up on that hill in that beautiful big house. And Matthias hated him more than anyone else, not only because he had a big house and all that wealth. He had a wife who loved him and kids who loved him, and he gave to the poor. He helped people. The whole town loved him. But the old man up on the hill was wise enough to not trust Matthias. And he knew he was getting old and he might die, and he had left instructions. When I die, put me in a casket so that people can see me in my front parlor. And you only carry me down it when the hole has been dug. Put me in the ground and bury me. He didn't want to give Matthias a chance to take his rings or his prized possession, the diamond stick pin that his wife had given him. Well, as will happen, time passed. The old man died. Matthias got the instructions to dig the grave, but he knew he wasn't going to get a chance to rob the coffin. Not before it went into the ground. But he dug the grave. The mourners came down. They planted the box. People wept and wailed, and the preacher spoke, and they left, and Matthias threw the dirt onto the coffin, under the watchful eyes of a few neighbors. But that's okay. He had a plan. He'd come back that night and dig it up. Dig up the coffin. This wouldn't be the first coffin he had to dig up after he'd planted it. So that night, at midnight, he got a shovel, he got a bullseye lantern, and he brought along his gun, just in case. And he went out into the cemetery and he found the grave. Well, the earth was still soft. It was easy digging. After an hour and a half, he found the coffin. He was clearing the dirt off the coffin. He got in the hole and was clearing the dirt, and he opened his light a little bit, and he heard something. He heard a noise. He listened. There was scratching coming from inside the coffin. Scratching! Well, Matthias didn't believe in ghosts and skeletons and dead men moving. He knew what that scratching was. It was the graveyard rats. Every New England cemetery had graveyard rats. And they would dig little tunnels, and they'd dig through the sides of coffins so they could get it, all that nice, fresh flesh. Well, he wasn't going to wait until that body was covered with rats, and they have to fight them to get at the stick pin. So he grabbed his shovel and he broke the lock on the coffin. Wham! And he pried up the lid. And he looked down into the coffin. And there was no body. Well, not quite. That's not true. When he opened the bullseye lantern, he could just see the feet of the old man disappearing down a hole. Not a small hole, not a little rat hole, a big hole. A big hole. The feet were disappearing. Matthias barely hesitated. He jumped down into the coffin, opened up the lantern, and shone it down the hole. There were rats pulling the body down the hole. And these weren't the little normal graveyard rats. Those were bigger than most city rats. Some of these rats were the size of small dogs. There were dozens of them, and they were pulling on the body, pulling it down the hole. But he could see in the light of his bullseye lantern, there was the stick pin, right here. Summoning up his courage, he pulled out his gun, he got his light, and he started elbowing down the hole after the body. And he's crawling after it, and the body's inching away, but he's making good progress. And he passes a tunnel on his right. Well, that must go to another coffin, another body they'd already pulled out. And he continues to crawl after, and he passes a tunnel on his left. Oh, another one. It doesn't matter. I'm going to get that. I'm going to get to the body. I'm going to get to the man. And he finally reached up and he grabs the foot of the old man. And one of the small rats bit him, and Matthias just slammed it against the wall, killing it instantly. And the rat squealed, but one of the big rats up front, hissed at him and started crawling across the man towards him. So Matthias took his gun and shot him. Bam! The sound was deafening in that tiny tunnel. His nose was full of cordate and sulfur. He could barely see through the smoke. When he could think again, he noticed the rats had gone, and he crawled up the man's body and he grabbed the Steinman stick pin and he ripped it free. Now he could leave. He had his prize. He'd beaten the old man. He had everything. All he had to do was get out. But he couldn't turn around. He had to back out. So he started backing down the tunnel. But the rats knew he was there now. And they started coming across the old man's body after him. Well, they'd run from a bullet. Let's see if it worked again. Bam! The rats ran and he backed further down the tunnel. And bam! And the rats flew. And he backed further down the tunnel. And he shot again. He was desperate to get away from them. And he could just feel the cloth of the coffin under his feet. He could just feel he was almost to safety. Let's drive these rats away one last time and get out of here. Bam, bam! He'd used all his bullets. But the rats had fled. And he backed into the coffin. And all he had to do was stand up. Stand up. And he looked around with his light. The cloth in his coffin was cheap. The wood was pine. This wasn't a beautiful oak coffin with satin. He'd backed down the wrong tunnel. He'd backed down into a coffin that hadn't been dug out. He was in a coffin with no way out. And his light was going out. And his gun was empty. And the rats were coming. Madam Toastmaster.
Whoa. Whoa. There were lots of things about that story. Wow, Kyle, thank you so much for that story. Okay, let me get my pool back. I have to get back to my pool. All right. Do we want to have some time to send a little feedback to our speaker? Nah, not this time. We're going to get to all give him some feedback later. So, all right. Are we ready for our second speaker? Are you ready to get scared again? All right. Our next speaker has a Bachelor of Science in Molecular Biology from Columbia, a PhD in Molecular Biology from Harvard, and a PhD in Computer Science from Berkeley. He has worked most of his career in the corporate and university settings, and in that time has learned to speak over 80 languages. I'm not sure I knew there were that many. Oh, most of those being computer languages. He is single, likes long walks on the beach, and coding late into the night. If interested, please send a snippet of your latest code. If it looks intriguing, I may get back to you. However, this speaker at the last minute has become unavailable. Instead, our very own Lee Amandangelo has jumped in to fill the speaking slot. Lee will be delivering a tall tale, Grandpa Outthunk the Devil. Please join us in giving a warm Laugh Lab Storymasters welcome to distinguished Toastmaster Lee Amandangelo. Ooh, you are muted, sir.
All right, gather round, kids. Gather around your grandpappy. It's story time. Come on over, take a knee. What story would you like to hear today? Oh, that's a good one. You want to hear what? You want to hear how your grandpappy got all these scars on his arms? I've never told that story before. I'll tell it if you promise never to have nightmares. Okay. This story took place about 12 years ago. My best and most loyal friend, my black Labrador retriever, and I, his name's Blue. We woke up early and packed our fishing gear and loaded the boat onto the truck, and we set off down the highway in the wee hours of the morning, headed for our favorite fishing hole. We finally, old Blue, I think, liked fishing more than I did, mostly because your grandmammy doesn't come along, but don't you tell her I said that, okay? And we were driving and finally we got to our spot just as the sun started to come up over the horizon. We set up our camp and we just got ready to take the boat off the trailer when all of a sudden the ground began to shake. And it was shaking violently, something like we never felt before. And it got bigger and louder, and a lot of noise, and a crack started happening in the earth. And the crack got bigger and bigger. And being the loyal dog that Blue was, he ran over to that crack, barking and barking, ready to defend whatever was happening. And all of a sudden, he lost his footing. And he began to slip, and I went running toward him, but it was too late. He fell in to the crack. And I got to the edge, and I looked down, and I couldn't see Blue. Blue, where are you, Blue? And I didn't hear anything. Blue, I couldn't see it. I couldn't even see the bottom of that chasm. I thought I heard a little whimper from old Blue. I felt so bad. I feel like I just lost my best friend. Tears began to well up in my eyes as I called out to Blue, but no sound. Have you ever lost a close friend or a family member? If you did, then you know how I felt. I was so filled with grief, and then I started to get angry, and I yelled out to the universe, I would sell my soul to get old Blue back. And then the earth began to shake again, more violent than it did before. And there was steam and smoke, and the occasional fiery flame came up from that crack. And all of a sudden, through the steam and smoke, I began to see something. It was huge, and it was reddish in coloration. And as the smoke began to dissipate, I saw it had horns, and it was standing on two legs. And in his arms, I saw old Blue, who was again whimpering. And the creature began to speak. Did I hear you say you'd sell your soul to get this dog back? I'm the devil. I will take that deal. I said, why don't you just give me my dog back and you go your way and we'll go our own way? He said, no, a deal is a deal. But I'll give you one last chance. I'll give you 3 days. If you can stump the old devil. The devil here knows everything in this universe. He knows all the history. He knows all the science. He knows every inch of this universe. If you can ask me to a question that I can't answer or a task that I cannot do, then I'll give you your dog back. But if not, I'll keep your dog and I'm going to take your soul. And the earth began to shake again, and I fell backwards. I think I hit my head on something, and I was out. When I finally came to, the earth began to shake again. And that old devil came up through that crack one more time. And he said, do you have that question or that command for me? I said, no, I just woke up. You just left moments ago. 3 days have gone by. You either have to ask me a question or give me a command, or I'm keeping this dog and I'm taking your soul. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to say. And he said, well, in that case, I'm taking your dog. And he started to descend back into that big chasm. And I'll come back later for your soul. Again, I got so mad and angry, and I yelled out, you old devil, you're mean and you're evil, and you ought to get lost. Just then, the devil started to rise up again through the crack. And he looked redder and madder than he ever did before. And he let old Blue down on the ground. And he shook his finger at me and said, okay, you won. And he descended back into that crack, and the earth violently shook again, and the crack covered over again. And I was confused. And then it hit me. He said he knew every inch of this universe. He couldn't get lost. And we got back into our truck, and we went driving back home, and the darkness had fallen. And your grandmammy was on the porch fretting and all concerned, and all of a sudden she saw us, and she grabbed her chest, and she was all excited. And then she went back to her old self and started yelling at me and old Blue, where have you been? And we said, we were coming fishing. Well, you're 2 days late. And she kept on yelling to us, and I told you why old Blue loved to go fishing, didn't I, Madam Toastmaster?
Well, I didn't know getting lost was so difficult, did you, Mary? No. Oh, wow, what a fun story. I am a little curious about the scars on his arm, though.
Yeah, when he was falling into the crack, old Blue grabbed on. I'm
Oh,
remiss in telling you that part. Grabbed onto
okay.
his arms and put his claws in. Sorry about that. I don't want the
Okay.
kids to get any nightmares, you know.
No. Good job. All righty then. Oh, according to our agenda, the next part of our meeting is table topics. This should be fun. I am going to start off by telling you the things that scare me the worst in the world is the unknown. And I used to love to read scary stories. When I was a kid, they had these books. You may or may not remember them. They were paperback books full of stories, and they were called Strange but True. So if you could convince me that something was true, I was scared out of my chair, out of my wits. I I would get so scared. So there was this one story I read. Strange but true. You see, there was a young man, and he was looking out the window at night, and it was a moonlit night. It was very gloomy outside, but the moon was shining off this man as he was walking across the yard. And he was carrying something on his back, a coffin. And the man turned and looked up at the young man in the window and just sort of grinned at him. And the young man knew that that coffin was for him. Well, when I read that, I had to get up and look out the window. Luckily, there was no one out there, but I was afraid to look out the window at night for years because I knew there was going to be a man out there with a coffin for me. So that's what I was afraid of, those kinds of stories that scare you, but they tell you that they actually are true. And I was so gullible, I believed them. So I saw something in the chat here a second ago. I think I was supposed to read that. Okay. All right. Table topics. It's time for you to tell us what really scares you. Truly, what really scares you. You know, maybe it's spiders. Maybe it's your wife. I don't know. So let's see. Who would like to go first? Phil, you're having a good time with that. Would you like to tell us what really scares you? And make it scary.
Madam Table Topics Master, what a good question, because occasionally it's my job to walk the dogs in the morning and in the evening. As you may be aware, the sunrise is later and later and later every day. Now, at my appointed time of walking the dogs, it's actually dark, like nighttime dark. Just this morning, I was walking our corgi. I took a turn up the street. We go 1,000 times, and one corgi I have to drag because she's not an athlete. The other corgi is an athlete and loves to walk. I was walking the athletic corgi. We just were tooling up the road. It's a well-lit street, but you can't really see the houses next door off the street because it's dark. Well, we were merrily going along when suddenly this huge dog grabs a corgi and drags her into the hole. Okay, it wasn't really, but the dog about killed us. We survived by aliens lifting us to safety. Madam Table Topics Master.
Were they big aliens?
They had a tractor beam.
All right.
Right out of Star Trek.
Kyle, looks like you're ready to tell us something scary. Oop, you're muted, hon.
Sorry about that. I'll also get rid of that yellow background that I forgot was up. I have a true story of being scared in the middle of the night. My brother and I went out on a Saturday to go to the movies, and we went and saw The Hand. It was a horror movie with Michael Caine as the main character. He's an artist who loses his hand in an accident. And the hand starts going around killing Michael Caine's enemies, anybody who inconveniences him. It crawls along the ground and hides and jumps out and strangles people. And I was not scared during the movie. I mean, it had a few jumps, whatever, but I wasn't terribly scared. It was a neat film. My brother and I talked about it, got home. That night, I went to bed. I woke up in the middle of the night, and I took my left hand and I put it down on me, and I felt a cold, lifeless, damp hand on me. And I couldn't feel my right hand. And I was like, there's a hand on me. There's a hand. I mean, I was trying to figure out what was going on. And about 20 seconds into my fear, my right hand started feeling pins and needles. And what I didn't realize is I had fallen asleep like this with my right hand under my head. I cut off all blood flow to my right hand, and then I had flopped it onto me, waking myself up, and found this dead, clammy, lifeless hand, and I couldn't feel it. So for a few seconds there, I was living the Michael Caine movie. And then feeling and reality slowly returned.
Thank you for sharing that, Kyle. Oh gosh. He's lucky the hand wasn't here. Oh, Karen, do you have a story to share with us?
I haven't said anything, so can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. I didn't, a specific story didn't come to mind, but as you spoke, I did find that I have a few fears. I have a fear of snakes, spiders, and lions and tigers and bears. Oh my! When I was when I was young, my brother used to like to scare me all the time, and he was really good at it. He could jump behind things, climb under bed. He could do all kinds of things, and he got me all the time. So one time I decided I'm going to get him back. So I hid under his bed. And when he had just gotten into bed and he was all comfortable, I came out from underneath and jumped. I scared him so badly, and he still got me in trouble. He always found a way, and he went whining to everybody and said that. And I just thought, oh. And I guess the other time that I think about is total blackness. When you can't tell what's up or what's down, right or left, and you lose complete get completely disoriented. When I took scuba diving lessons, they take you down and completely blacken everything, and so that you lose your orientation, so that you're able to do that if something happens when you're diving. And yeah, I have to say it totally freaked me out. I was not, I hated that. And anytime I'm in total blackness, I just feel so scared. And we, but I love Halloween. I love the frightening things. I love all of that. And we had a big Halloween house that I grew up in Great Lakes. It was a bunch of houses combined, stairs and attics and climbing things. And so we did it all up at Halloween. And I did well with all of it, except for the total blackness or the climbing out or a spider. And what nailed that for me, my last comment to pull it all together, is that I had been away and came home, and I had a washcloth on my counter of my sink, and I was getting ready for bed, and I just took the washcloth and I'm wiping my face, and out comes a spider climbing on my face. I totally freaked, and I still just hate spiders to this day. Madam Table Topics Master.
Thank you, Karen. I have to say that the idea of getting into any kind of tunnel is just not something I would ever want to do. Just the idea of all that earth above you, yeah, no, not going there.
Or being buried alive. That's the other thing that would just totally
Wow.
freak me out. We actually had a patient that was buried alive, and he needed to have an MRI, and he couldn't go into the tunnel. They ended up actually putting him under general anesthesia to do it because he couldn't. Oh.
Wow, I didn't. Ooh, wow. Yeah. They had to give Dwight drugs to get him in the MRI too. Well, Mary. Or have you already shared with us what scares you?
I'm a scaredy cat. I am, I cannot watch scary shows. The scariest show I can watch, and even then, I stand at portions of it. Remember Twilight Zone? Like, those episodes terrified me. Master storytellers. I think my imagination is so vivid that everything becomes real to me. I have been hysterical twice in my life, like lost control. Once, when I was a teenage girl, when I was with a group of other teenage girls, no adult supervision. They'd gone off to some bridge party. We were at the beach, and unbeknownst to me, one of the teenage girls, one group of teenage girls had met a group of teenage boys, and they invited them back to that evening to the cabin we were staying. And I didn't know this, and I went very innocently to open the window, and as I pushed it open, this face appeared out of nowhere, and it terrified me. I was so hysterical that they had to run, girls had to run down the street to get the mom back so somebody could calm me down. So that fear of the kind of unknown, I think, that the monster's always out there, and monsters are very real to me, apparently. I have no fear of ghosts. I have no fear of spiders. I have fear of the unknown monster. So I better go use that courage muscle and watch some more shows to see how they all survive. Back to you, Madam Toastmaster.
Kyle, Lee, we haven't heard from you yet. Does anything scare you? Quickly.
Does anything scare me? Yeah, a few things that people said. I remember when we were kids, we used to build these tunnels in the dirt, and we put wood over them, and we'd be in there. And the fear of that thing collapsing was probably my biggest fear. That would be my biggest fear. But I have a theory of why we have fear, and it stems back to religion. We heard about vampirism. We heard about zombies. And basically, as humans, we want to live forever. When you look at any religion, it's all about living forever. Not necessarily in this world, but you get to live somewhere else in the world. Vampires was intriguing to people because once you became a vampire, you became immortal. And things like zombies, these are people that are dead, but they're still somehow alive, and we give them all this anthropomorphism that they're actually like humans, but they're really not. And I think all of our fear is really based on we don't want to die. And I think we can trace it all back to that. So that's our biggest fear. Back to you, Madam Toastmaster.
Thank you. And thanks to Kyle, we can go to bed tonight and have nightmares about being trapped. Yes. Or the hand. Yeah. All right. Well, let's take about a 5-minute break. And we come back, we're going to have our evaluations. So let's take a potty break. And Phil has volunteered to be GE. He's also one of the evaluators. So we'll let him take over now. Over to you, Phil.
Thank you so much, Madam Toastmaster. It is my honor to serve tonight as your general evaluator. My job is to do two things, and that's to get the input from the people that had evaluation portions for the speeches, the timer's report, and then I will give a little bit of a overall review of what I think as a general evaluator we did well and what we could maybe do improve. I will start off because I'm the first evaluator, number one, for speaker number one, who was Kyle. Kyle, your story, I've heard it before, but it gets better each time I hear it. The things that I really think that came through even better this time is you set up the story with the details about the gravedigger and why he was despised and who he disliked and what he was going to do and all the details about how he was hoarding the treasures from the bodies. I especially enjoyed that. I not enjoyed, but thought it was effective. The talking about the teeth, because now we're starting to get a little bit grotesque. In my mind, anyway, it was like, okay, well, stealing the watches and the necklaces, not but now pulling out teeth, that's starting to make me cringe a little bit. And started to set me up for more cringing as you described how he redug the grave and then went back in. And how you set it up with the rats gnawing at the corpses and at the fresh meat and talking about that. It was all really good setup for just a grotesque kind of tense, suspenseful situation. You really embraced, I think, that you had a great end. You really embraced that the story doesn't need to have a happy ending. You followed Mary's advice to the T on that. It was perfect. And not only did it not have a happy ending, you didn't really tell us what happened. And that left us to fill in the blanks on what in the world happened to the poor gravedigger. Did he somehow miraculously escape? Did he end up getting eaten alive? Or did he just totally freak out and lose his mind in there? Who knows? Which actually, that was a scary thing I should have shared during table topics, because I have a not grotesque story, but real story. Sometime I'll tell. But so all that was really good. Now, I'm sure you'll tell it again because it's a great story and it has great value for Toastmasters. I wonder if maybe instead of everything being in the third person as you're speaking, I'm wondering if you could set up a few things to do part of the speech in the first person, as if you were the gravedigger, or you were the dude that lived up on the hill, and that would maybe give it a chance to be, oh, two cats, a chance to be even more real in that storyline. I really thought you had great vocal variety and great movement around the speaking area. I'm wondering if there's maybe an opportunity to even amp that movement up somehow. I'm sure difficult. It is difficult with Zoom, and it's even more difficult with a background because it's hard to predict how the background's going to interact with our bodies. I think you had that element. I think that element can even be more animated and really kick up your story. Overall, I thought it was a great story. It gets better each time you tell it. If it gets a little bit better, I'm looking forward to the next time I get to hear it. Thank you. And the next, we don't have, I think maybe we should do a little bit of a round robin for it, since we don't have any other evaluators for Kyle assigned. We have a few minutes. Would anyone like to give Kyle some feedback either on the story itself or just some other information? Yes, Emmy.
Thank you, Mr. General Evaluator. Kyle, this is one time when I think your rocking back and forth actually intensified the stuff. So many times we're, trying to get you to calm that down, but I think it really did help on this. So good job.
Anyone else? Oh yes, Karen.
Kyle, I love the story. I felt we were with you the whole time, and I felt that getting intense and wondering what was coming next. But I found the background that you had challenging with that, because the background was a bunch of flowers, and somehow it didn't relate to I think what you've got now would work a lot better, or something scary, some sort of a graveyard or something would have enhanced your story a little bit more. So you might consider that in the future. But I loved, something like that would be perfect, because you were grave digging and you weren't bringing up flowers unless it was a comical one. So yeah.
I forgot. Thank you.
Mary.
So I loved hearing this, especially after I had just read or done some research on what makes a good scary story. So you had you clearly you own this story, and that's one of the tips I didn't share. You own the story. You gave a common fear. Actually, you had two, I think, fairly common fears. One, that after we die, something bad is going to happen to us. Like none of us, is my grave going to get robbed? Is there somebody going to desecrate me or my loved ones after death? I think that is a fairly common fear. And then, to go deeper with the fear of Matthias being attacked by rats. I mean, that's another fear. So you had layers of fear, which I really liked. You had a good ending. Served him right moment. Yes. So I loved that. I was confused at one point, and it just might have been me being distracted. When you said he went through the coffin, but he realized it was the wrong coffin. And I thought, why would he? I thought he went through a tunnel. Why would he be backing into a coffin at all? So was there a point where you told us that
there were some branches which he went past.
Right.
You mentioned a branch on the left and a branch on the right.
Right.
When he was backing up, he leaped down one of those branches.
Right, but you said he expected to have a lined, satin-lined coffin, and instead it had old cloth in it. Why would he be in a coffin at all?
Because he backed down a tunnel into somebody else's grave.
Right, but am I missing the point? So when you said he backed up,
yeah,
I knew he was backing into a coffin of somebody else's because he backed down the wrong tunnel.
Yes.
But you said he expected to stand up and hit a hardwood with satin-lined coffin. Why would he be? Didn't he go down a tunnel? The fact that he was in a coffin at all.
Well, okay, so all the tunnels lead to coffins because the rats dig the tunnels to get to the coffin.
Right, except the one he went in initially. He didn't go in.
Yes, he dropped down into the coffin.
Oh, I see. See, I've totally missed that point. Sorry.
Okay.
Okay, sorry. Yep.
I'm glad that you said that because that means I need to be clearer.
Well, because it comes so early.
Mm.
Yeah. Okay, that's it.
Emmy.
Well, I did think this earlier and I meant to say it and I forgot, was that it didn't seem to me like you really mentioned the side tunnels as much this time. So it felt, because the other times when I've heard it, he's backing up and he's not sure which way to go. And he goes the wrong way. So it felt kind of like, how did he get in that tunnel, So.
Well, I understand how he would get lost in reverse, right? Because you come down one way and then you have to back up the other way. And it'd be very easy to do.
Especially for you.
Now there's another fear, getting lost. Yeah, anyway.
Okay, thank you very much. Now we'll go on to speaker number 2 in the evaluation. Our humor evaluation is from Karen. Karen, I'll let you go, and then we'll have a short round robin for Lee as well. Karen.
Thank you, Phil, and especially thank you to you, Lee. We don't have a content and effectiveness evaluation, so I'm going to speak briefly to humor and then speak a little bit more about content and effectiveness. The reason for that is I would probably not classify this as a humorous speech. I was looking really hard for pieces of humor mixed in and out, and I didn't find a lot in the way of humor, which is okay. Not every speech has to be humorous, but since that was my area of focus, I tried. So what I would say is that your intro and building us up to this person and then shifting to, oh, that's not who's here, was sort of a twist on humor. You could potentially say that. And a couple of times I smiled a little bit as you gave phrases, like when you talked about the phrase, oh, don't tell her I said that. I smiled. I was like, oh yeah, been there, done that kind of thing. And then at the very end, when you highlighted the being 2 days late and why did they go fishing, that was another twist there. And those were the pieces where I found a little bit of humor. Could you have added more humor to this? I say potentially, but I don't know that I think it's necessary, because I would not classify it as that type of speech. If I speak to you as far as content and effectiveness, there's a lot there, because I think the content certainly brought us into a story right from the beginning. When you changed your voice and became Grandpa and started talking about a scary story and nightmares, I was right there, remembering the times that I was sitting around a fire and telling campfire stories, and the scarier the better. And it brought me right there. So that was done very well. You had good descriptors with the scars on the arms and taking us where you were going to go, and having your dog with you, and the friendship, and then the sadness, and the ground shaking and opening, and we were right there with you, and went down that hole, and we were all wanting to pull up Blue at the same time. And I think all of those were very well orchestrated. You had a good story format with the introduction, introducing the characters, and then bringing us up to the tension, and then when you're able to bring him back, and then you throw in the ringer with your devil wanting to have the challenge and keeping Blue, and the story around that. So the sub story inside your story. I thought all of those were done very, very well. I did, someone else mentioned before, I think it was maybe Emmy, you wondered, or someone wondered about the scars. I did as well. At the end, I was waiting for that to come full circle, because you started with the scars, and how did you get your scars? And a story you'd never told. So that I would, do full circle with that. And the only other comment I would make is, there were a couple of times when you were speaking that it was hard for me to completely hear what you were saying. Part of it, I think, was the accent that you were, being the grandpa. And I was like, what was that? What was that he said? Like right at the very end. And I was like, oh no, I don't want to miss the punchline. And I wasn't quite sure what you were saying. So just maybe slowing it a little bit, and a little pause, so we can understand, because I loved the character you became, and working through that. So I think it's a fun story, one that's easy to track with you the whole way, and brings us right into the emotion, which is of course what connects you in a story, is the emotion. So thank you for sharing, and I loved that. And I would not classify it as a humorous story. So thanks.
How about some round robin comments? Anybody have some feedback for Lee on his speech? Kyle.
I do. So you had three characters: the old man, Blue, actually four if you count the old man's wife, but the old man, Blue, and the devil. And most of the time you spent doing the old man's voice. I think you differentiated the devil a little bit. I'd like to see you differentiate it more. You did a little bit of Blue, so good job there. The word pictures you painted around the crack and the gas and the smoke and the flames was good. I really like that. I think, if memory serves, your intro said this was a tall tale. I don't think it fits the category of a tall tale. I don't know what the category would be, but there's a category of stories about people, especially in the South, people thinking or outthinking or dealing with the devil. So there's a whole series of stories like that. I was thinking, I want to deal with the scars issue too. the old man in blue are going fishing to get away from the grandma or the old man's wife. And when they come back, she's hitting them. So rather than having scars on his arms from Blue's claws, why not give him lumps on the head from Grandma's rolling pin? And that brings it full circle. I reached down into the canyon to rescue Blue. Was that when you got the bumps in the head? No, that's later. And I was talking to the devil. Is that when you got the bumps in? No, that's later. And he gets the bumps on the head when he comes home, and his wife whacks him. That way, it creates a closed loop, and adds a touch of humor to it. The other thing I would have liked to have the telling the devil to get lost to be a moment of inspiration, because that's Granddad out thinking the devil, as opposed to Granddad saying something that just happens to be the right thing. I just a moment of quick inspiration, of insight. I'm not sure how to say that quickly so that you don't get bogged down in it, but it's a moment of blinding insight, and he blurts out, "Get lost, devil," or "old son," or whatever. Anyway, I like it. I would like to know what the genre of the story is called.
Mary.
Similar to Kyle's, having done some research on scary stories, I love that you had a ha-ha ending. Both, like, you cheated death, and that was funny. It was like this twist, the devil, death basically at that point, but you cheated hell, and that was, I think, very funny. Like, I laughed at that. He outsmarted the devil. Like Kyle, I had an idea for what you could do with the scars that would come full circle with Grandma. The bumps wouldn't work because this is many years later. But she could be chasing him with hot, because that's something a Grammy would do. She took that pot off the stove, "Where have you been?" and started a defended myself kind of moment, and you have scars, the hot scars to prove it, which could also be a moment of when you reaching down into the hot earth kind of moment too. I love that you put I knew who I was in your audience. I was one of your grandchildren leaning in. And so I was listening to it from that perspective. Now I know I have deep emotion, and I also know probably you're going to tell me some kind of story I'm not going to actually believe, because that's who you are in my life. Like, you created that really instantly, within a few sentences. And so I think that was just masterful. Really appreciated that. Thanks.
So just a couple of comments. At the end, when the devil's taking Blue away because Grandpa couldn't come up, Grandpa runs to the chasm. At that point, I saw the yellow light from Kyle, so I better wrap this up. But he goes to grab Blue, and Blue digs in, and they both and the devil overpowers him, and it just rips his arms. And at the end of that, I say, I would have taken 10 times that pain just to have old Blue back. And I was so mad and so angry. That's when I said, get lost. But the thing about fishing, they don't go fishing to get away from Grandma. They love to go fishing, but Blue especially likes it because Grandma doesn't come along. And at the end of the story, she's just berating him with verbally, like, "Where have you been? I've been so worried about you." It's not like she wants to beat him with rolling pins or pots. So that's it. But the twist is they just beat the devil, but now they got to deal with Grandmammy. So yeah, I missed that one part about the arms. Sorry about that.
Any other comments for Lee before we go on to?
I
think
kind
I'll
of
get her. Okay, go ahead. Yeah.
At the end there where the devil has taken him and you yell back out at him, and I can't remember how Blue comes back out, but it seems like the ground should spit him out. And then you hear the devil, blast you, old man, or whatever, you know. I can't get lost, whatever, you know. But I just had this image of the ground just spitting him out. But I love the story. That was
Okay, thanks very much. I'm going to kind of break with the agenda just a little bit. I'm going to ask for a timers report, who I think is Kyle, but I'm not 100% sure.
You're muted, Kyle.
It is me, and I'm not 100% effective. So Mary went 16 minutes and 24 seconds. I was probably on time, but I failed to hit the start button. So I don't know. Lee was 6 minutes and 50 seconds. In terms of table topics, I only managed to time 2 people. Lee was 1 minute and 25 seconds, and Mary was 1 minute and 56 seconds. Everybody else, I dropped the ball. I obviously need to do timing more often.
Well, thank you, Kyle, Mr. Timer. And the yellow light was up when I first saw you, and when I did my table topics, and I thought, wow, that time went by so fast.
Yeah.
It's like I didn't even see the green one come up. Awesome. Yes, thank you very much. Now for my general evaluators report. We did a great job. I want to call out, first of all, for both the speakers and for Mary. Thanks so much for just a wonderful presentations tonight. Mary, great job on summarizing some really specific and specialized speaking skills and telling a scary story, doing the research and sending it off to us. That was a wonderful tool for us to look forward to in the future. Obviously, Kyle used it right away and left us hanging at the end with his scary story, and Lee had a great story that wove it through from beginning to end as well. The one thing, we struggle sometimes with getting everybody in, and I'm hoping that that's something we can be mindful of in the future, but I really do appreciate that everybody stepped in and then was adaptable to make a meeting work very well. I think it's a great tool that we'll have in our arsenal for our club videos recordings that we have, and I appreciate that we continue to soldier on at a kind of a little bit of a rocky start, but it really worked out very well at the end. And with that, I will give it over to our Toastmaster, Emmy.
Thank you, Mr. General Evaluator. All right. I think that actually was a very fun meeting. Of course, we all like each other, you know. Yes, we're good. What we'd like to do now is find out what's going on in our next meeting. And Mary said that she'd be willing to speak to that. So Mary
I
Morrison.
can, just a couple of minutes. So in November, I thought I would play off the theme of thankfulness, and by challenging everybody to use the social skills, social speeches, I think it's called, in Pathways. I think every path has it. It's a level 4, I believe, project, and it covers eulogy, receiving an award, presenting an award, and I cannot remember what the other one might be, a toast. I don't remember, but challenging everybody to do one or more of those speeches using that project and following that. If you need to make it a longer then I think they call for like 3 to 4 minutes. Sorry, I didn't do my homework as well as I should have, but I'll set it up so that we can have a chance to sign up, each of us, to do something, and then we actually get it's a Pathways project also, so you could get credit for it. So doing something like that, and if you don't want to do that Pathways project thing, you then sign up for Toastmaster and General Evaluator and blah blah blah. So there you go. That's it in a nutshell.
Thank you.